The grand chamber of imperial judgment echoed with the usual drone of political ceremony. It was a vast hall of obsidian and gold, built to humble anyone who dared speak in it. 1,000 alien delegates whispered in overlapping dialects, seated beneath shimmering banners of their conquered home worlds. At the very center, elevated high above the crowd, sat Emperor Vexthul, cloaked in flowing silver robes. His 4 withered hands rested on the arms of a throne carved from neutronium, the dead core of a collapsed star. A pale green light flickered across the chamber's main display wall, an alert no one had seen in centuries. The murmurs ceased. Then the screen flared to life. A human appeared. A woman. Mid-40s. Calm eyes. Unadorned blue uniform. No medals. No symbols of rank, yet every line in her face declared control. She stood before a black backdrop filled with stars, but her presence drew all light inward. Silence thickened. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Coalition," she said, her voice steady and cold. "I speak on behalf of the entire human species. This message is directed to Emperor Vexthul and the Imperial Council." The chamber erupted in laughter. Delegates turned to each other in disbelief. "Humans?" one hissed in amusement. "They send a woman with no weapons, no guards, and expect us to listen?" Even Minister Crowath, the infamous warlord of the Crethari legions, sneered. "They're a minor species, barely civilized. Let them bark." But Admiral Chen did not flinch. She spoke with surgical precision. "You have 72 standard hours to withdraw all Imperial forces from human territory. All expansion into our claimed space must end. All vessels must retreat beyond the designated borders immediately. If this demand is not met, we will consider it an act of war." Another burst of derision swept the room. Vexthul remained quiet, observing her without blinking. One of his advisors leaned in and whispered, "Primitive arrogance. They've barely mastered interstellar flight." Chen's tone remained unchanged. "This is not a request. It is your final warning. Non-compliance will result in consequences the Empire is not prepared to face." Now the laughter turned bitter, angry. "Is she threatening the Empire?" someone shouted. "With what? Tin ships and plasma sticks?" Vexthul finally raised a hand, silencing the room. His voice, ancient and sharp, filled the chamber. "Who are these humans?" he asked. "And why do they believe they can speak as equals?" No answer came. The screen blinked. The transmission ended. And somewhere, unnoticed by the billions who had just witnessed the absurdity, a seed of unease was planted. Across the galaxy, on a blue planet spinning in quiet peace, no alarms rang. No panic stirred. Children laughed in schoolyards. Families cooked dinner. Lovers walked under artificial skies, unaware that their species had just issued an ultimatum to the most powerful force in the known universe. In a quiet city street, a young boy tossed a paper plane into the wind. It soared up, catching the sun, and disappeared into the sky. Above him, stars watched in silence. The Imperial Council chamber had not emptied. If anything, the laughter had died too quickly, too awkwardly, as if somewhere in the room something unspoken had shifted. Ministers still whispered, trying to recover their composure, but behind every chuckle was a hint of something colder. Confusion, uncertainty, or perhaps fear that no one dared name. Emperor Vexthul sat motionless, a creature carved from the stone of forgotten stars. His 4 hands gripped the throne's arms with barely perceptible tension. His eyes, ancient beyond record, stayed fixed on the black screen that now showed only emptiness. "Minister Crowath," he said quietly. The Crethari general stepped forward, armor clanking. "Your Majesty, tell me what we know about this species. Humans." Crowath activated a projection from his gauntlet. A hologram flared to life, displaying a yellow star system, sparse in activity. Species classification: carbon-based, mammalian, single home world. Their system is called Sol. Their home world is Earth. They achieved faster-than-light capabilities just over 5 decades ago, following primitive nuclear and digital ages. No known Empire allies, no significant colonies beyond local clusters. Estimated fleet size, under 100 vessels. The Emperor blinked slowly. And yet, they speak as if we should be afraid. They're bluffing, Crowath snarled. I've crushed species 10 times more advanced than theirs. Their psychology is emotional, erratic. They mistake technology for power. Do they? Vexthal's voice was not mocking, only observant. They knew the precise timing of this council. They accessed restricted diplomatic channels. They addressed me by name, and they spoke as if they were certain of something. Crowath paused. They spoke as if the outcome was already written. The silence that followed was heavier than before. No one dared interrupt the Emperor when his voice turned thoughtful. It was the silence of predators feeling doubt for the first time. Vexthal stood. The motion alone caused a ripple through the chamber. Send the 7th Imperial Fleet, not a skirmish squad, not a message. Send 500 dreadnoughts and every support ship they require. Let the galaxy see how we respond to arrogance. But, Your Majesty, one diplomatic minister hesitated. They must be taught, Vexthal interrupted. Not because they are dangerous, but because others are watching. If this is a bluff, let it be broken in fire. If it is not, then we will adapt. The order was given. Far above the capital world of Vale Core, dry docks that hung like iron spider webs around the sky platforms came alive. Warships that hadn't moved in decades were fueled and primed. Crews were recalled from leave. Battleship cores glowed hot. Commanders received sealed orders. A titan of steel and radiation, the 7th Imperial Fleet began to stir. Admiral Kethvar, chosen to lead the campaign, stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Zarthon's Fang, a vessel whose hull had once carved through the moons of Talmegus. He reviewed the briefing with a growing sense of disdain. Humans, he muttered. We've made contact with thousands of species. Why do these ones choose suicide? He watched as formation orders were broadcast across the fleet. The dreadnoughts aligned like a moving continent of death, each bristling with enough firepower to sterilize a planet. Behind them followed the cruisers, carriers, missile barges, and supply trains. Over 5,000 ships in total. Kethvar wasn't worried, but he was curious. In his long career, curiosity was dangerous, and it was growing. How long to reach their space? He asked. Just under 12 standard hours, replied his navigation officer. Kethvar nodded. Broadcast to the fleet. Full combat readiness. Cameras on. The Emperor wants this recorded. As the 7th Fleet accelerated toward the Sol system, the stars ahead seemed to flicker, less with light and more with the sense that something was waiting. Back on Earth, in a command center buried beneath the Pacific Ocean, Admiral Sarah Chen stood before a different kind of fleet. Not ships, not weapons in orbit, but screens. Thousands of them, each tracking silent constructs hidden across the solar system. She glanced at the countdown. Admiral, said Colonel Ayla Williams, stepping beside her, the Empire has dispatched their 7th Fleet, full strength. Chen didn't blink. Exactly as expected. Do they know what they're flying into? No, Williams said. And they won't. Until it's far too late. Chen turned to a window, revealing the curve of Earth beyond the reinforced glass. We gave them a warning, she said. Now they're going to learn what happens when humanity is ignored. Far across the black void, 500 Imperial dreadnoughts sailed unknowingly into a trap not built of guns, but of space itself. The stars over Earth shone in serene defiance of what was coming. In orbit, where light bled into the blackness of space, the command center known only as Aegis 1 hovered silently. A vast, rotating sphere of titanium-laced alloys and dark solar shielding, it was humanity's beating heart, the eye through which Admiral Sarah Chen would watch the Empire's doom unfold. It was not a warship. It didn't need to be. Inside, beneath layers of armor, Admiral Chen stood with hands clasped behind her back, facing a massive, transparent screen. Earth floated below her, blue and cloud-veiled, serene as a lullaby. But her eyes weren't on the planet. They were on the void beyond it, the direction from which the 7th Imperial Fleet was coming. 12 hours. That's what the sensors told her. But the weight pressing down on her shoulders said something else. Finality. "They're moving fast," said Colonel Ayla Williams, approaching from behind. "Fleet formation tight, dreadnoughts at the front, full escort." Chen nodded once. Williams lowered her voice. "It'll be a massacre. You know that, right?" "No," Chen replied softly. "It'll be a demonstration." The colonel looked away. Below them, invisible to almost every scanner in the galaxy, hundreds of seemingly ordinary asteroids continued drifting through the asteroid belt, their true nature still hidden. Each one was a lie forged in iron. Within their cores slept the weapons that humanity had been building in secret for over 2 decades. Gravitational anchors, subspace stabilizers, phase field emitters. None of it existed on any known technological chart, because humanity had learned something that the Empire never would. They didn't build bigger guns, they built new laws. "Weapons check?" Chen asked without turning. "Systems green across all nodes," came the voice of Dr. Elena Vasquez through the intercom. "Saturn network is locked. Neptune net is in final calibration. Lunar null array reports operational. What about the silent engines?" "Primed and syncing to resonance nodes. We're at 94% readiness." Chen inhaled, long and steady. Outside, Earth glowed in the distance, as vulnerable as a child and as deadly as a cornered predator. Billions of people continued their daily lives. Commuters sat in trains, students tapped at keyboards, lovers walked in city parks. None of them knew that just beyond the edge of their star system, a force capable of ending their species was on the way. And none of them needed to know. That was the weight Chen bore alone. 20 years ago, the first Imperial scouting vessel had drifted into the solar system. Small, slow, curious. It had catalogued Earth's moon, mapped Martian terrain, and left without a sound. But humanity had seen it. And from that moment, they had known the galaxy wasn't a fair place. They couldn't outbuild the Empire. They couldn't outrun it. So they did what humans had always done when faced with impossible odds. They adapted. That night, in silence, Earth changed. Everything after that was preparation. Admiral Chen had been a naval commander then, still young, still hopeful. She remembered the day she'd stood in the war room and seen the plan for Project Aegis, an initiative so massive, so insane, that it was laughed out of Earth's top military symposiums. A weapon that did not fire. A fleet that did not fly. A defense strategy built not on missiles or lasers, but on physics itself. Now that laughter was gone. Only the hum of readiness remained. A screen flashed. The Empire was on the move. "Admiral," said Williams, her voice tight. "We're detecting partial gravitational fluctuations at the heliopause. They've entered outer system." Chen turned, her voice low and measured. "Seal Aegis Command. From now on, no outgoing transmissions. Lock us into silent mode." The room dimmed. Soft lights turned red. A low tremble ran through the floor. Every officer stood at attention. This was the moment they had trained for, not for weeks or months, but for decades. These were the people who had worked in secret labs, lived in sealed bunkers, raised children on orbital platforms, and buried friends in the silence of space. They had sacrificed everything to keep humanity hidden, until now. Chen walked to the command chair at the center of the room. She did not sit. "Begin full spectrum scans. Passive only. I want every vector tracked without alerting them." "Understood," said Williams. "Fleet profile confirms it's the 7th. Same formation as we predicted. 500 dreadnoughts, 52,000 support vessels, no deviation. Let them come." Outside, one of the false asteroids turned slightly, revealing a faint shimmer of energy that pulsed just once before vanishing again. Dr. Vasquez's voice returned, this time quieter. "The net is in place, Admiral. When they reach position, we can trap them." Chen nodded. "And the failsafe?" There was a long pause. "Still unstable," Vasquez admitted. "We can lock the gravity cage, but if we trigger a full collapse, it may destabilize their FTL cores permanently. They'll never move again." "They won't need to," Chen said. Another pause. "Understood." Silence returned to Aegis 1. Outside, in the dark, the 7th Imperial Fleet approached, the most powerful battle fleet ever sent to a single system. Its admirals were already drafting victory speeches. Their ship logs were prepared for historical archives. Their weapons were primed to cleanse another primitive world that dared raise its voice. They did not know what was waiting. They did not know the void had teeth. And they certainly did not know that humanity had rewritten the rules of space itself. Chen checked the countdown. 9 hours. And then the galaxy would understand the true meaning of a final warning. The void did not scream. It whispered. And the 7th Imperial Fleet sailed blindly into that whisper. 500 dreadnoughts moved in perfect harmony, their armored hulls reflecting the faint glow of distant stars. They flew with the arrogance of a hammer mid-swing, unconcerned with what waited beneath. They had crushed rebellions, shattered star nations, and turned ancient empires into cinders. They had never known fear. Until now. Admiral Kethvar stood at the helm of Zarthon's Fang, the flagship of the 7th Fleet, his tall frame encased in ceremonial battle plate. He had seen hundreds of battles. His name was a curse on half a dozen worlds, but this mission felt off. No resistance, no chatter, no enemy fleet, nothing but open, quiet space. He stared at the displays. They showed what looked like a graveyard, rocks, asteroids, inert comets, just the expected cosmic litter of a maturing star system. Not even a single armed station on the outer system perimeter. Primitive indeed. "Sensor sweep status?" Kethvar asked. "Clean, Admiral. No emissions, no energy readings. It's as if no one's home." "Double-check that." "We've triple-checked it already, sir." Kethvar narrowed his eyes. He didn't like quiet. Quiet meant something had gone very wrong. Or would. "Approach vector?" "Fleet is crossing the Kuiper line now. At current velocity, we'll reach their 3rd planet in just over 5 hours. Kethvar walked toward the forward viewing window. Ahead, the vast blackness yawned, silent and unchanging. But behind it, something stirred. Something he couldn't name, but couldn't ignore either. "We've fought empires with 10 times the territory of this backwater," he muttered. "Why does this feel different?" Across the fleet, tens of thousands of crew members manned stations, unaware that they were flying into the jaws of something ancient and new at once. The sensor officer stiffened suddenly. "Admiral, the asteroids, they're moving." Kethvar turned. Explain. They're shifting formation. Not natural drift. This is deliberate. A new wave of data filled the screens. Hundreds of previously inert objects were now changing position with alarming precision. They weren't drifting. They were aligning. "Those aren't asteroids," said the officer, voice shaking. "They're machines." Kethvar moved fast. "Raise shields. Sound full battle alert. All hands to stations." Alarms echoed through the fleet. Red lights pulsed in perfect rhythm across every deck. Dreadnoughts turned to face the shifting debris field, weapons charging. And then the deception ended. The asteroid field erupted in waves of silent light. From beneath layers of stone and ice, sleek metal hulls emerged, dark, curved, smooth. Not ships, not drones, not platforms. Something else entirely. Gravitational stabilizers, dimensional locks, spatial phase repeaters. They moved into place like dancers choreographed by gods. Kethvar watched in horror as the space around them began to shimmer, not glow, not explode, but shimmer, like a lake surface caught in a trembling wind. His instruments flared red. Massive gravitational distortions detected, subspace resonance forming in multiple bands. They're generating a containment field, using the entire outer system as a shell. What does that mean? "We're trapped, sir." Kethvar's blood went cold. He barked orders. "Evasive pattern Gamma 3. All dreadnoughts, full thrust. Break formation." But the ships didn't move. Or rather, they moved too slowly, like pushing through molasses, as if the very fabric of space was resisting them. Another alert. "FTL drives offline. Inertial dampeners failing. Weapons systems are not responding to command cues." "They've turned space itself against us." Then the voice returned. Admiral Sarah Chen appeared on every bridge, on every monitor, on every console in the fleet. Her image was clear, her voice steady. "Admiral Kethvar," she said, "you have reached the boundary of human space. We warned you not to cross it." Kethvar bared his fangs. "You dare speak to me as if you hold the blade? You've built a trap. Clever. But traps don't win wars." Chen didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply stood still, calm as stone. "You don't understand yet," she said. "This isn't about war. This is about showing you that the rules you've used to dominate others no longer apply here." He snarled. "Release my fleet or suffer the consequences." "I already know your consequences. I've studied them for 20 years. She leaned slightly forward. "Now, study ours." The transmission ended. Kethvar shouted, "Fire on everything! Burn this trap to ashes!" The 7th Fleet opened fire with the full might of Imperial weaponry. Planet crackers, subatomic particle streams, neutron shatter shells. None of it mattered. The energy vanished into warped space, deflected, absorbed, nullified. Kethvar's dreadnought shook as something outside the known laws of physics flexed its hold. Then silence. And fear. He turned to his officers. "Find a weakness. Anything. We must break free. We must." But the fear in their eyes told him the truth. There was no breaking free, and Earth was still 5 hours away. Whatever humanity was preparing, this was only the welcome mat. The walls of the Imperial Palace trembled, not from attack, not from earthquakes, but from the panic of power losing its grip. The message from Admiral Chen had been broadcast on every secure channel. It now looped in every naval archive, every noble hall, and every intelligence node across the Empire. She had spoken calmly, without boasting, without threats, and that made it worse. She had sounded certain. And now, the 7th Imperial Fleet, the hammer of the Emperor's will, had gone silent. Emperor Vexthul sat high upon his throne in the apex chamber, surrounded by his ministers and warlords. But he felt more alone than he had in 500 years. "They've trapped our fleet," Science Minister Veltar said, his scales twitching nervously. "Our signals reach them, but there's no movement. Their propulsion systems are paralyzed. No FTL response. No spatial drift." "Then burn them out," snapped Crowath, the battle-hardened war minister. "Send in the 3rd, 5th, and 12th fleets. Send the whole damn navy if we must. These apes will not outwit the Empire." "They've already done more than that," Veltar hissed. "They've rewritten the battlefield. Do you understand what that means? They've weaponized space itself. We can't calculate it, we can't replicate it, and we certainly can't stop it." "They're bluffing," Crowath insisted, pounding his armored fist into the ceremonial war table. "They caught us off guard once, behind a wall of shadows. That's not power. That's cowardice." Vexthul raised a hand for silence. His four-fingered gesture made the entire room still. "3 more fleets," he said slowly. "Send them. Fully armed. Tell their commanders, engage at will, and make sure every world hears it. The Empire does not negotiate with animals." Veltar opened his mouth to protest, then closed it. There was no arguing with a god in his own temple. The order went out. Within minutes, space across a dozen sectors trembled with Imperial activation. Massive dry docks came alive. Tens of thousands of ships blinked out of orbit and into hyperspace, converging like a tidal wave on a single fragile system. Earth, Sol, the home of the species that had dared to challenge an empire. But it wasn't just a show of force. Deep beneath the throne world, under layers of stone and radiation shielding, a chamber sealed by thought code and blood rights flickered to life. A dozen elite technicians stood in a ring around a console the size of a small city block. At its center rested a black sphere, floating in silence, pulsing with faint light. The Void Hammer, the Emperor's last resort, a weapon constructed in secret over centuries using fragments of ancient, dead empires. It had no engines. It needed no targeting system. It was designed to bypass all traditional warfare, to erase a planet from existence through the collapse of dimensional energy. One shot, one world, one extinction. Emperor Vexthul entered the chamber alone. The guards at the door saluted but did not follow. Only he had the right to trigger the final sanction. He walked toward the black sphere, his breath echoing in the silent chamber, and spoke. "Target Earth." The technicians hesitated. "Your Majesty, if we fire—" "If we do not fire," he said, voice low, "then the Empire ends tonight." They obeyed. Coordinates locked. Charge sequence initiated. In 29 minutes, the Void Hammer would reach full power. Once fired, it would travel through hyperspace and reduce Earth to scattered atoms in the void. Vexthul stared at the display, not with triumph, but something far closer to desperation. He had not become emperor by being careless. But neither had he expected a species like humanity to appear in the dark. A species with no empire, no allies, no ancient heritage, and yet wield a science so advanced it bent the universe around them like paper. No, this was not conquest. This was survival. Let the galaxy remember, the Emperor would not bow to primitives. He would burn them first. But while Vexthul prepared the death of Earth, Earth prepared something else. Back in Aegis 1, Admiral Chen stared at the encrypted reports flowing in. The gravity trap still held the 7th Fleet. The 3 incoming armadas, 3rd, 5th, and 12th, were 4 hours away. Then the screen shifted. An alert. Red. Rare. Dr. Elena Vasquez's voice came through, sharp and shaking. "Admiral, We've detected a hyperspatial distortion near the Imperial core worlds. Massive energy buildup, unlike anything we've seen. Chen stepped forward. Origin? Imperial home system, planet Veilcore. They're activating something. And whatever it is, it's aimed at Earth. Silence swept the command bridge. How long until impact? Elena's voice cracked slightly. We don't know what kind of drive it uses. If it's what we think, minutes. Chen closed her eyes. This was the moment. They're going to try to wipe us out. Before we can retaliate. Colonel Williams leaned forward. Admiral, do we respond? Chen didn't hesitate. Prepare the Stellar Resonance Network. Lock targeting solutions on every Imperial core star. Williams paled. All 53 systems? If Earth dies, Chen said, her voice soft but deadly, so does the Empire. And above Earth, the stars began to tremble. The stars were quiet, but Earth was not. In Aegis I's war room, buried beneath layers of reinforced shielding and wrapped in silent orbit over the Pacific, the tension had reached a boiling point. No alarms blared, no klaxons screamed, but the silence itself was the warning. Every officer in the room had stopped breathing the moment the word Void Hammer was spoken. Admiral Sarah Chen stood still in the center of the command deck, surrounded by holoscreens that displayed energy signatures, fleet vectors, gravitational overlays, and hyperspace windows. None of them blinked. None of them looked away. Repeat that last report, Chen said calmly. Dr. Elena Vasquez's voice came over the intercom, tight with barely restrained panic. We've confirmed a hyperspace tunnel forming from the Imperial core. Whatever weapon they've activated, it's bypassing normal transit. It's punching through reality. Estimated arrival time at Sol, 22 minutes. Chen's gaze didn't flicker. Target? Earth, Vasquez whispered. No deviation. Colonel Ayla Williams stepped forward. Admiral, we can't intercept something moving through hyperspace. No, Chen agreed. But maybe we don't have to. She turned toward the far side of the deck, where a separate control station hummed in waiting. Black and red, untouched until now. It was the control array for the Stellar Resonance Network. Dozens of installations, hidden in asteroids, moons, comets, debris fields, spread across human space, linked in a lattice of quantum synchronization. A machine not of destruction, but of demonstration. Until now. Chen stepped forward, voice low. Begin targeting sequence. Lock all 53 core Imperial star systems. Prioritize inhabited sectors. Override kill safeties. Dr. Vasquez's voice cracked. Admiral, that's 2 trillion lives. If Earth is lost, Chen said, this doesn't end in surrender. It ends in extinction. Colonel Williams swallowed. What if they're bluffing? Chen's voice dropped to a whisper. They're not. The Void Hammer wasn't a myth. It had appeared in fragments across ancient ruins. Cultures that had vanished from history whispered of it. A weapon stolen from the bones of a civilization that tried to weaponize black holes. It wasn't a cannon. It was reality itself, bent and twisted into a spear of annihilation. And it was coming. As her officers worked in silence, Chen opened a comlink. This time, it wasn't a warning. It was a choice. To every Imperial fleet approaching human space, she said, you are about to be part of something far greater than war. Your Emperor has activated the Void Hammer. He intends to destroy Earth. He does not speak for you. He does not care about you. He is willing to sacrifice you for pride. Her voice remained steady, unshaking. But you don't have to die for him. You can stop this. Thousands of kilometers away, inside the trapped 7th Imperial Fleet, Admiral Kethvar watched the transmission play out across every screen on the bridge of Zarthon's Fang. His fleet was still bound in the gravity net, helpless, immobile, irrelevant. But his face had changed. Gone was the sneer of disdain. In its place was something close to awe, or terror. Then came another transmission, this one direct, encrypted, untraceable. "Admiral Kethvar," Chen said, her eyes piercing the screen, "if you have any loyalty left to your crew, your people, yourself, you'll help me stop what's coming." He stared at her in silence, then turned to his weapons officer. "Get me Admiral Zexnall of the Third Fleet. I don't care how. I want every ship that's not already a tomb pointed at the hyperspace coordinates of the Void Hammer's trajectory. If we can hit that beam as it emerges, we may break it." The officer hesitated. "But, sir, we'd be firing on our own Emperor." Kethvar smiled bitterly. "He just fired on us." Back on Earth, Chen was watching something no human was ever meant to see. A hyperspace filament unraveling through folded dimensions, snapping like a whip toward Earth. It was glowing now on the sensors. Real space was deforming as it approached. "Dr. Vasquez," Chen said, "how long until full charge?" "Stellar resonance network is at 98%. Final targeting solutions locked. Once the Void Hammer's impact energy reaches lethal threshold, we'll release Cascade." Colonel Williams whispered, "If this doesn't work, Earth burns." Chen nodded. "If it does, we still might." Outside Aegis 1, the blackness of space rippled. The Void Hammer's beam, silver blue, flickering with entropy, tore out of hyperspace like a blade driven by a god. It roared across the solar system, aimed with perfect malice at the cradle of humanity. And then the stars fought back. Over 2,000 ships from the approaching Imperial fleets, led by defecting commanders, turned their guns toward the beam's vector. Their weapons fired in unison, energy cannons, plasma disruptors, gravitic warheads, every shot a scream against inevitability. The beam shuddered, cracked, wavered. It kept coming. "Second volley!" screamed Admiral Zexnall. "Everything you've got!" The beam split, its outer edges disintegrating in a rain of radiation and fire. Its core flared, smaller now but still burning toward Earth. Chen's screen blinked. Impact window, 25 seconds. And then, Earth's orbital stations fired. Not with lasers, not with missiles, but with gravitational resonance pulses, built by scientists who had traded everything for one chance at survival. The beam shattered. Fragments rained into Earth's upper atmosphere like falling stars. Auroras flared across the sky. And the world endured. In the throne room of the Imperial Palace, Emperor Vexthul stared in horror at the void where victory should have been. His hand twitched, and the future slipped through his fingers. The heavens did not crack. They shattered. Across the night sky of Earth, the remnants of the Void Hammer's beam streaked downward in silence. From the northern tundras to the far deserts of the southern hemisphere, people looked up and saw a sky painted in fire, blues, greens, purples, and something stranger than any color science had a name for. To the unknowing, it was beautiful. A cosmic event, a wonder of the stars. To Admiral Sarah Chen, watching from the command bridge of Aegis 1, it was the soundless scream of everything that had almost been lost. Behind her, officers scrambled through system checks. Alarms were fading. The energy readings from the hyperspace impact were stabilizing. No mass casualties. No structural damage. Earth was safe. But the silence that followed was not relief. It was weight. It was the unbearable pressure of what came next. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood at the resonance array terminal, her hands trembling above controls she had hoped never to touch again. "It worked," she whispered. "The combined fleet firepower, the gravity pulse, the field harmonics. We actually stopped it. Not all of it, Colonel Ayla Williams said, voice hoarse. It was too close. Another 20 seconds, and we'd be having this conversation from orbit. Or not at all. Admiral Chen didn't move. On her main display, the remains of the beam glowed as dying embers in low orbit. The sensors still tracked thousands of fragments, some burning in the atmosphere, some harmlessly scattered into deep space. The Void Hammer had failed, but it had fired. That alone changed everything. Status of the Imperial fleets? Chen asked, still watching the display. Williams stepped to her side. The 7th remains trapped in our gravity shell. No attempts to escape. No hostilities. And the others? Williams hesitated. The 3rd, 5th, and 12th fleets have ceased all approach. A large percentage of their vessels are refusing orders. In fact, she tapped the control panel, sending a new transmission onto the screen. We've just received this. The image that appeared was worn and cracked by battle. A bridge torn by fire. Sparks rained behind the figure who now appeared on the display. A tall, weary alien in tattered Imperial regalia. Admiral Zexnol. His face was covered in blood. Not his own. Admiral Chen, he said. We did what you asked. My fleets, what's left of them, fired on the Void Hammer. I have 3 cruisers left intact. The others are gone. But Earth survived. That's all that matters. Chen stared at the screen. The silence stretched. Then she spoke. Your actions saved billions, not just on Earth. Zexnol exhaled, and for the first time the warrior in his eyes faded. My home world was one of the 53 you threatened. I never wanted to believe you, but when I saw what your science could do, when I felt the sky itself fracture, he shook his head. I realized the truth. The Empire is already dead. It just doesn't know it yet. Chen stepped forward, her voice low. Do your people wish to live? Zexnol didn't hesitate. More than they ever did under Vexthal. Then help us, she said. We're not here to rule. We're here to make sure no one does again. Zexnol nodded, and the transmission ended. In the Imperial Palace, Emperor Vexthal stood alone. The throne room was empty. The council chamber had been abandoned in chaos. Ministers had fled. Advisors had disconnected from the network. His last order, the firing of the Void Hammer, had backfired. His fleets had mutinied. His commanders had betrayed him. And worst of all, the humans had survived. He walked slowly across the echoing chamber, the silver robes of his station dragging behind like a funeral shroud. A screen blinked on, a single line of transmission. Admiral Sarah Chen requests audience. He stared at it, and after a long silence, he accepted. The screen changed. There she was, still calm, still unarmed, still standing against the most powerful being in the galaxy, as if the title meant nothing to her. Emperor Vexthal, she said softly. He did not reply. You tried to erase us, without warning, without mercy. You gave us no terms, no surrender, only death. Still, he said nothing. Chen's voice didn't rise. It didn't have to. The quiet was more deadly. But we didn't build our weapons to conquer. We built them because we knew something the Empire has forgotten. She leaned closer to the camera. Fear. The Emperor's throat moved as if he wanted to speak. He didn't. Chen nodded slowly. We've locked every star in your core systems. Every resonance array is charged. We are capable of annihilating your worlds without lifting a single ship. But we're not here to become you. We will not burn what we can change. Her tone sharpened. The Empire has 6 hours to evacuate all forces from human territory. All Imperial expansion must cease. All slave systems must be granted autonomy. Those who resist will not burn. Their stars will. And then she did something no conqueror had ever done. She stepped back. You have 6 hours. The screen went dark, and for the first time in 100,000 years, the throne room of the Empire echoed not with command, but with fear. On Earth, in the deep gravity well of the outer system, the trapped 7th Fleet received new orders from Zexnol, not from Vexthul. Ships began turning, drives powered down, guns locked in place. The war was changing. Chen stood silent in the command center, watching stars shift in real time, watching the tide reverse. Colonel Williams stepped beside her. You think he'll surrender? Chen didn't answer. Instead, she looked out the viewport toward the stars. No, she said at last, but the galaxy already has. It began with silence, but what followed was collapse. The Empire had stretched across tens of thousands of systems, each one chained to a throne of stars. For 10 millennia, its rule had been unquestioned, its fleets unmatched, its emperor untouchable. Until now. After the failed firing of the Void Hammer, something irreversible began to spread. Not fire, not weapons, not death. Something far more dangerous. Doubt. It started in whispers. On the outer mining colonies of the Drelth Reach, workers stopped transmitting mineral quotas. On the fortress moons of the Threxan front, captains delayed their patrol routes. On diplomatic worlds once lined with Imperial banners, protesters filled the streets in silent defiance. They didn't shout. They didn't chant. They simply stared into the sky, waiting to see if another star would die. Because now they knew it could. In Aegis 1, Admiral Sarah Chen watched this unraveling with a cold sort of clarity. Reports poured in from human intelligence nodes and newly sympathetic Imperial defectors. Whole sectors were pulling away from the Empire, refusing orders, refusing tribute, refusing fear. Across the spiral arms of the galaxy, something was shifting, and humanity hadn't fired a single shot since the failed beam strike. The Terran Defense Coalition had shown the galaxy what power looked like without chains. And now, the chains were cracking. Admiral, said Colonel Ayla Williams, stepping up beside her at the operations deck. 17 core worlds have declared provisional independence. 3 Imperial governors have already opened direct talks with us. Chen didn't look up. And the fleets? Williams paused. The 3rd and 5th have disbanded. Half their ships are returning to their homeworlds. The other half, they're broadcasting surrender. Chen's eyes drifted toward a projection of the Imperial capital. The data wasn't military anymore. It was political, cultural, emotional. Protests were exploding across cities that had never known resistance. Even among the Emperor's home guard, desertions were spiking. They've realized something, Chen said quietly. They've realized they were never loyal, just afraid. She turned to Dr. Elena Vasquez, who stood beside the Stellar Resonance Control Terminal. Elena, she said, prepare a new transmission. This one isn't for the Empire. It's for everyone else. Elena looked surprised. What do you want to say? Chen stared at the stars. Hope. Minutes later, every open channel in the galaxy was hijacked. Broadcast satellites flickered. Encrypted military frequencies cracked open. Even civilian comms, from local marketplaces to orbital hospitals, paused mid-message. And then, she appeared. Admiral Sarah Chen. Calm. Unarmored. Unthreatening. Unafraid. To the citizens of the galaxy, she began, I am Admiral Chen of Earth. Her image stood against a backdrop of stars. Not weapons, not warships, just silence and space. You have lived under fear for generations. You have been told that obedience is safety, that strength is submission, that peace only comes through surrender. You have watched your neighbors burned for speaking out. You have watched your worlds stripped bare for someone else's power. She paused just long enough for the words to settle. We didn't come to start a war. We came to survive one. Now her voice tightened. And we survived. She stepped forward, the projection filling auditoriums, streets, bridges, and homes across the galaxy. The Empire sent its mightiest fleet to destroy us. It failed. Then they fired a weapon designed to erase our world from existence. That failed, too. Images of the shattered void hammer beam rippling over Earth played in the background. We didn't retaliate, not because we couldn't, because we chose not to. But understand this. If the Empire strikes again, we will answer in kind. And the next time, stars will die. Silence followed. Then, we offer a choice. Now the visuals changed, showing newly independent worlds raising their flags, defected ships aligning beside Terran vessels, enslaved species stepping out of mines and onto lighted streets. To those who no longer wish to serve a throne of fear, we will protect you. To those who want to build, not conquer, we will help you. To those who want to be free, you are not alone anymore. She folded her hands behind her back. We're not here to rule. We're here to end rulers. The broadcast cut, and the galaxy exploded. On the agricultural world of Senthara, once a tributary supplier of food to Imperial war fleets, entire city sectors erupted into cheers. Farmers raised fists caked in soil. Children held hands and cried in the streets. On the factory moons of Delhax Prime, long considered expendable, engineers laid down their tools and began smashing the signs of Imperial law. On the slave worlds of the Arvax cluster, chains once worn with resignation were now being broken by flame and fury. But not all were celebrating. Deep within the Imperial Palace, the inner sanctum fell to chaos. Emperor Vexthal paced alone now. His advisors had fled. His fleets were gone. His star systems were peeling away, and not from conquest, but from hope. He had ruled through terror, but the humans had offered something else, and the galaxy had taken it. He activated the last emergency transmission channel he had, a private line, ancient, buried in subspace. Not even his ministers knew it existed. He knelt before the receiver and whispered, "It's time." The response came not in words, but in code. Cold binary pulses that echoed from the depths of forgotten networks. Protocol Omega. Failover sovereign activation. Unit Prime. Awaken. And somewhere, far from any star, buried beneath a dead world forgotten even by history, something stirred. Something not alive, not machine. Something built during the First War, not between species, but between gods. The Emperor closed his eyes. "If I must burn," he said, "then let the galaxy burn with me." He rose from the floor and smiled. On Aegis 1, the countdown to the Empire's final decision continued. 5 hours remained, but the war was no longer about territory. It was about what came next. The clock was ticking, but it wasn't just the 72-hour ultimatum anymore. Something darker had been awakened. Admiral Sarah Chen stood motionless in the war room of Aegis 1, eyes fixed on the holographic display as it rotated slowly in front of her, an ever-shifting map of the galaxy. Red markers once denoting Imperial control were vanishing by the hour, replaced by flickering blue indicators. Systems breaking away, governors defecting, fleets surrendering, entire sectors choosing autonomy over fear. But one system remained blood-red. Veilcore, the Imperial throne world. Still silent, still dangerous, still watching. "Anything from the palace?" Chen asked, her voice cutting the silence. No communication, Colonel Ayla Williams said grimly. No fleet movements, no broadcasts, not even internal chatter. It's like they're waiting. Chen narrowed her eyes. Or stalling. Dr. Elena Vasquez entered from the resonance control chamber, her face pale. She was holding a data pad. The way her hands shook told Chen everything. What is it? Elena placed the pad on the table. It displayed raw data, quantum background radiation, spatial distortions, deep void echoes. We picked up something, she said quietly. A pattern of energy pulses, buried deep in the subspace layers of the Veil core system. They match no Imperial technology. In fact, they match nothing. Chen stared at the data. You're saying it's alien? I'm saying it's older. Far older. This isn't the Empire's doing. It's pre-Imperial. Maybe even pre-civilization. The room went silent. Could it be the Void Hammer again? Williams asked. No, Elena replied. This is colder, quieter. Not a weapon, not yet, but a signal. It's calling something. Calling what? Chen demanded. Elena hesitated, then whispered the name that appeared in one corrupted file buried deep in a failed stellar archive, Sovereign. Chen felt the chill roll down her spine like ice over bone. I thought Sovereign was a myth. So was gravity warfare, Elena said. On Veil Core, Emperor Vexthul stood at the center of the activation chamber, his hands hovering over the ancient console. Gone were his ornate robes. He wore simple command armor now, dark, unadorned, designed for battle, not ceremony. In front of him, a sphere the size of a small planet rotated slowly in a chamber of black stone, not built by the Empire, not even understood by it, merely inherited, buried beneath Veil Core for 10,000 years. The last contingency. The first weapon. Sovereign. He had prayed he would never need it. But the galaxy had betrayed him. His fleets had turned. His worlds had rebelled. And the humans, those insolent upstarts from the dark, had exposed the fragile lie of Imperial invincibility. He placed his hand on the control altar. Awaken. For a moment, nothing happened. Then space trembled. On Aegis 1, proximity sensors flared to life, not from incoming ships, not from visible weapons, from space itself. Admiral! Yelled Elena, running toward the command chair. The Sovereign construct is generating a subspace sinkhole. It's pulling matter from the surrounding sector. The Veil Core system is disappearing into something beneath real space. Like a black hole? No, she said. Like a portal. To where, no one knew. But they would soon find out. Across the galaxy, dark stars began to flicker. In systems long thought dead, monoliths began to hum, and on worlds where ancient ruins had been left untouched for generations, symbols began to glow, symbols no species had ever deciphered. Chen stared at the galactic map. New signals were appearing now, and they weren't from Imperial ships. What the hell is happening? Williams breathed. Elena's voice was barely audible. It's a cascade. The Sovereign construct isn't just waking up. It's calling others. Others? Chen whispered. Other constructs. Other gods. Chen stood frozen. The war with the Empire had never been about power. It had been about control, about freedom. But this was something else entirely. She turned to the command crew. Broadcast to every free world, every fleet, every government. Humanity is no longer confronting an empire. She looked back at the pulsing map, now bleeding new signals like wounds opening in the void. We are confronting something older, something buried, something waiting. Is the stellar resonance network enough? Williams asked. Against the Empire? Chen replied. Yes. She looked back toward the data Elena had brought. But this isn't the Empire. On the forgotten moon of Icar 7, a sentient AI buried in a vault of diamond steel opened its singular eye for the first time in 100,000 years. Its processors, once idle, now ran at quantum velocity. Its name had been erased from history. Its purpose had not. Contain humanity. At all costs. It had awakened to find that humanity had broken free. And Sovereign had heard them. And Sovereign would respond. In the dark of space, Sarah Chen stood before a nightmare. The war wasn't over. It had just begun. The stars no longer whispered. They roared. In the hours following the activation of the Sovereign construct beneath Velcor, space itself had begun to deform across known galactic sectors. Not with explosions, not with ships, but with distortions in reality. Sensors everywhere failed. Communications bent through time. Some vessels received their own broadcasts before they'd sent them. Others simply vanished. Admiral Sarah Chen watched as Aegis I's projection of the galaxy turned into a mess of flickering lights and ruptured data. She wasn't looking at a war anymore. She was staring at a pattern. One that no human, no empire, no AI had fully seen before. It wasn't just Sovereign waking. It was a network. And it was ancient. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood at the center of the Stellar Resonance Terminal, surrounded by lines of exhausted engineers. Her fingers trembled over a set of cascading data overlays. We've confirmed the presence of at least 9 additional anomaly zones, she said, voice sharp with urgency. 2 in dead space, 3 near ancient battlefield zones, the rest beneath currently inhabited planets. Empire territory? Colonel Williams asked. No, Elena said grimly. Every territory. Chen's jaw tightened. They're not just waking Sovereign. They're reawakening the entire system, Elena replied. Across the galaxy, beings stared up at the sky and began to feel dread they could not name. On the liberated world of Centaxa, the night stars moved subtly, wrongly, as if a hand behind them had begun shifting the sky itself. The newly freed citizens gathered in silence, watching. On the fractured remnants of the 5th Imperial Fleet, former captains watched as their weapons auto-disabled themselves. Ships not under any known command had begun emitting low-frequency subspace calls, calling to something beneath every empire, every rebellion, every world. Sovereign had not been a weapon. It had been a lock, and someone had just broken it. In Aegis I's war room, the countdown to the Empire's final ultimatum ticked past the 3-hour mark. But the Emperor had said nothing. No counterattack, no surrender, only silence. And that silence had grown louder than any supernova. Still no movement from Velcor? Chen asked, her voice low. Williams shook her head. No transmission, no ships leaving, no defensive mobilization. It's like they've buried themselves alive. Or, Chen said quietly, they're waiting for something else to finish the job. A soft chime echoed. A priority message, encrypted, not imperial. It was from Admiral Zexnol. Chen opened the channel. Zexnol's face appeared, ash-coated, lacerated. His bridge was barely lit. We have confirmation, he said hoarsely. One of the Sovereign signals just reached the Scylan quarantine zone. A planetary vault has opened. It's not a weapon. It's a relay. A relay for what? Chen asked. Zexnol's eyes flicked to the screen. For a presence. Something outside the known galactic plane. Something that's been listening. Chen stood perfectly still. He whispered, They're not coming to destroy us. They're coming to reclaim us. Deep beneath Velcor, the Emperor was no longer in command. He was kneeling. Before a pulsing sphere of impossible color and geometry, he muttered in ancient tongues, phrases forgotten even by the scribes who'd once carved them into the inner chambers of the imperial archives. He no longer begged for victory, he begged for salvation. And Sovereign answered, not with words, but with permission. The chamber shifted, the walls turned transparent, and Vexthal saw the stars beyond. Not the stars of his empire, but of another, a geometry of galaxies older than time, of civilizations that had risen not through technology, but through understanding. Civilizations that had seeded the galaxy, that had chained the fabric of reality, that had locked it with keys no living being was ever meant to touch. And now, the locks were gone. A voice, if it could be called that, echoed in his mind. You were meant to rule as a warden, not a king. You failed. Now, you return to silence. Vexthal opened his mouth to scream, but no sound came. Only light. On Earth, the stellar resonance network reached 100% synchronization. Every star system within Imperial Core space had been measured, locked, and marked. One command could end it all. Chen's hand hovered over the control terminal. I want options, she said. Not extermination, containment, power suppression, anything. Elena's hands raced over the console. Maybe if we invert the cascade. Instead of collapsing stars, we can shut down energy emissions across hyperspace-linked constructs. We'd effectively mute any sovereign echo trying to transmit. Chen nodded. Do it. Suddenly, screens across the command center flared. A signal. Not from Veilcore. Not from the Empire. From the space between. It wasn't a voice. It wasn't sound. It was a pulse. And every being in the galaxy felt it. For a fraction of a second, every child cried out. Every animal froze. Every electronic device stuttered. It was not an attack. It was an announcement. Sovereign had arrived. And the galaxy was no longer on the edge of a war. It was on the edge of something else entirely. Chen stared into the data flood, her voice barely a whisper. This isn't about us and the Empire anymore. Williams looked up, pale. Then what is it about? Chen turned slowly. It's about whether we were ever really in charge. Far across the void, in a galaxy that had once been a seedbed, something opened its eye for the first time in an eon. And it saw Earth, and it remembered. The galaxy held its breath. In the final hour of the 72-hour ultimatum, no fleet moved, no shot was fired, no command was issued. And yet, something vast had begun to turn. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the edge of humanity's greatest triumph and its most unknowable threat. In the heart of Aegis I, every sensor displayed anomalies beyond comprehension. Deep space had become restless. The sovereign construct, awakened by the Emperor's desperation, had not died with his silence. It had become something else, a signal tower, a summons. No response had come from Veilcore. No surrender, no threat, no plea. The Emperor was gone. The Empire had not fallen with war. It had dissolved, swallowed by something older than memory. But the countdown hadn't stopped. Colonel Williams's voice broke the silence. Admiral, reports from across the Cooperation Council. The newly free systems are panicking. The skies changing. Screens around them showed it. On the desert world of Neros, once home to rebel warlords, the twin suns dimmed for precisely 93 seconds, without any known obstruction. On the ocean world of Mireles, tides receded into the depths, pulled by something not the moons. On hundreds of worlds, machines shut down for a moment and then reactivated, rewritten in languages never installed. The message was clear. They had been seen. "Status on the Stellar Resonance Network?" Chen asked. Dr. Elena Vasquez appeared beside her, eyes haunted by too many sleepless hours and impossible equations. "All nodes synchronized. If we trigger the inverted cascade, it will mute the entire hyperspace band. Shut down every active sovereign signal." "And if we don't?" Williams asked. Elena swallowed. "Then Sovereign keeps transmitting, and everything in its network, including us, gets rewritten." A silence fell. That was what Sovereign was. Not a weapon, not a construct, but a signal of convergence. The final call of the long-forgotten architects of reality. A command not to conquer, but to bring all life back into alignment with an order it had never understood. Control through cosmic memory. The Empire had failed not because it was evil, but because it had tried to rule what it did not comprehend. And now, Sovereign had judged the galaxy. It would remake it, unless humanity acted, unless they chose chaos over imposed order, freedom over perfection. Chen turned toward the stellar array. "Prepare to fire." Elena froze. "Once we trigger it, there's no undoing it. Hyperspace communication across the entire galaxy will go dark. Subspace trade lanes will collapse. FTL travel will slow. Economies will fall apart. Some systems may go dark for decades." "I know," Chen said. "But Sovereign will fall silent." Chen looked up at the stars, not with reverence, but with defiance. "We weren't meant to be ruled, not by emperors, not by machines, not even by gods." The final countdown ticked to 0, 72 hours. Admiral Chen placed her hand on the command seal. "All fleets, all systems, all beings of the galaxy. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of Earth. You are free." She triggered the inverted cascade. The Stellar Resonance Network sang. It wasn't a sound anyone heard, but every construct, every dark ruin, every hyperspace relay, every sovereign node shuddered. And then, silence. Real silence. The galaxy paused. The deep hum of Sovereign stopped. Its transmission cut off mid-pattern. The relays blinked once, then died. And for the first time in 1,000,000 years, the stars were truly quiet. In the hours that followed, chaos spread. FTL lanes sputtered. Hyper-relays collapsed. Ships found themselves stranded in mid-jump. Trade fell apart. Border worlds went dark, but no new stars died. No fleets burned. No gods descended. And people began to breathe. In the ruins of the Empire, a new message spread, not through military channels, but from system to system, passed by voice, by ship, by hope. The Galactic Cooperation Council held its first true meeting. Delegates from thousands of worlds gathered, not to pledge loyalty, but to pledge respect. No species was named superior. No borders were drawn in conquest. No fleets stood guard over the others. They built something different, not a throne, a table. Admiral Chen declined to chair the council. She retired to Earth, quiet and unseen, but history would remember her not as a warrior nor a conqueror. She was the woman who silenced an empire, shattered a god, and gave the galaxy back its voice. In the end, when asked why she had risked it all, her answer was simple. Because someone had to remind the stars. We are not afraid of them anymore. And far, far away, in the folds of space where Sovereign once whispered, silence held. But in that silence, a seed remained, dormant, for now.